And the payload on board, that's the focus of this mission, weighs 29,458 pounds. Once Atlantis reaches orbit and has shed the external tank and solid rocket boosters, it will weigh only 266,424 pounds. That's just 5.9% of its total weight at liftoff. And it will weigh even less once it comes back for landing. The touchdown weight is projected at 205,168 pounds. When landing occurs the day after Thanksgiving on November 27th at 9:43 a.m. after a mission that has lasted 10 days and 19 hours as currently planned. These shots here now taken after dark with the xenon lights around the launch pad shining on Atlantis. Meanwhile, back here at Kennedy Space Center and looking aloft, we can see the skies are gradually becoming more scattered. We are green for launch for weather at this time, but we're standing by for any weather updates that may be coming either from Kathy Winters, our shuttle weather officer, or from Spaceflight Meteorology Group in Houston, who's responsible for forecasting the weather should a return to launch site here at Kennedy be necessary, or should we have an issue with weather at the overseas emergency landing sites in Spain and France. And weather downrange in the solid rocket booster retrieval area is mostly clear with seas 2 to 4 feet. So we'll be picking up the countdown in another 14 minutes. We're at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. This is shuttle launch control. This is Shuttle Launch Control. Just under 11 minutes remaining in this planned built-in hold. Just a few minutes we should hear our NASA Test Director Steve Payne beginning polling his team for final readiness and giving them any last-minute instructions, and we'll also hear from our Launch Director Mike Leinbach. Our orbiter test conductor Jeff Laufer from the United Space Alliance will confirm that the orbiter, Atlantis itself, is ready for a liftoff. This is the 31st flight of Atlantis, which was delivered to the Kennedy Space Center in April of 1985. It was the fourth spaceship in the orbiter fleet. Two of the most notable payloads that Atlantis has flown are the Galileo space probe to Jupiter and the Magellan space probe to Venus, but as well it docked with the Russian Mir space station 7 times. There are 3 main engines on Atlantis, but each main engine by itself generates enough thrust to maintain 2 4-engine Boeing 747s in flight at the same time. Again, Atlantis, as we see the space shuttle there, weighs 4,522,383 pounds. Seven minutes now remaining in this built-in hold.
OTC, CHDD.
HDD.
I can give you step 1141. Confidence checks are complete.
CMQC, copy 1141.
I copy.
And to the STM.
Go ahead.
We have a weather advisory if you want to copy it.
Do we need to worry about it in the next 9 minutes?
Negative. It's 18 knots steady state.
Okay, we'll worry about it later. Copy. CISL, JRPS, and Houston Flight performed the L-15 recorder activation. ISL,
ISO copies.
RPS?
RPS copies.
Flight.
Houston flight copies.
And MS1, OTC, Art of Ground 1.
C power, TBC. Oops, what?
Go ahead. Okay, let's try again for our V10 recorder. Activating V10 recorder.
Okay, that's in work.
Attention on the net. This is the NTD conducting the launch status check. All stations verify ready to resume count and go for launch. OTC. OTC is go. TBC.
TBC is go.
PTC. PTC is go. LPS.
LPS is go.
Houston flight.
Houston flight is go.
Mila.
Mile is go.
STM.
STM is go.
Safety console.
Safety console is go.
SPE.
ST is go.
LRD.
LRD is go.
SRO.
SRO is go. You have range clear to launch.
And CDR.
The crew of Atlantis is go.
Copy, thank you. And launch director, NTD.
Launch director.
Our launch team is ready to proceed.
Okay, copy that, Steve. Thank you. I'll do my poll at this time. KC Chief Processing Engineer, verify no constraints to launch. No constraints. Thank you, Steve. Payload Launch Manager.
Mike, the ISS ground processing team is ready to go.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Appreciate that. KC Safety and Mission Assurance.
KC safety and mission assurance will go, Mike.
Thank you, Mark. Range weather.
Weather is green on all constraints. Winds are from 335 degrees, 18 to 25.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. And Ops Manager.
See, Mike, MMT doesn't have any issues that we're tracking. Looks like a good day. You are go to launch Atlantis.
Okay, copy that. CDR Launch Director.
Go ahead.
Okay, Charlie, all the vehicle systems are outstanding today. The weather is near perfect for a good liftoff and flight today, and our RSS is retracted. So on behalf of the KSC processing and launch teams, wish you good luck, Godspeed, and we'll see you back here just after Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Mike. We really appreciate all the effort that's gone into making this launch attempt possible. We know there's been a lot of people working some really long hours on weekends and long days with all the vehicles that are out there. We're excited to take this incredible vehicle for a ride and meet up with another incredible vehicle, the International Space Station. So with that, thank you very much for all you've done, and everybody across the country that's participated. We're ready to go.
Thank you very much, Scorch. Appreciate that. NTD, with that, you are clear to launch Atlantis.
Copy, clear to launch. Attention on the net. The countdown clock will start in 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
NTD ISL.
Go ahead.
Order activation is complete.
Copy.
OTC MS1 for V10 report activation.
OTC copies. The countdown clock will start in 1 minute. Mark.
Standing by to pick up the count in 30 seconds. Picking up the count in 10 seconds.
The countdown clock will resume on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
T-minus 9 minutes and counting.
GLS auto sequence has been initiated.
The computer here in the firing room is now controlling all events associated with the launch. Over 1,000 parameters are going to be checked in the next 9 minutes. Right now we're activating the onboard flight data recorders on Atlantis. We're about to transmit the final program pre-launch commands.
Central buses to fuel cells for your checklist.
And that's in work.
Fuel cell buses being activated.
Central buses are connected to fuel cells.
We are going to be retracting the crew orbiter access arm in about 15 seconds.
GLS is go for orbiter access arm retract.
Atlantis OTC, the station is waiting for its spare parts, and Nicole is waiting for a trip home, so we won't keep you here any longer. Have a great ride to orbit and a fantastic mission.
Awesome. Thanks.
That was orbiter test conductor Jeff Laufer from the United Space Alliance. Coming up in about 30 seconds, the pilot will perform the auxiliary power unit pre-start operation. APUs actually start at T-minus 5 minutes.
JRPS OTC, start APU display recorders. APU recorders are running. PLT OTC, perform APU pre-start.
That's first. APU pre-start complete. 3 gray talkbacks.
And OTC copies.
T-minus 5 minutes, 30 seconds. We're starting our firing room data recorders here in firing room 4. We're arming the solid rocket booster safe and arm devices.
GLS is go for orbiter APU start.
PLT OTC, perform APU start.
That's in work.
CDR OTC, reconfigure heaters.
Our terminating LOX replenishment.
Your reconfig is complete.
In about 30 seconds, we will
OTC copies.
we'll see the orbiter's flight controls put through a final check. Coming up in about 15 seconds. That'll be followed by a steering check of the 3 main engines, which we will also be able to see.
GLS is go for purge sequence 4.
Now see a steering check of the rudder. Coming up on steering check for the 3 main engines. Verifying now those 3 main engines are in the start position.
GLS is go for ET LO2 pressurization.
CLT OTC, clear caution warning memory, verify no unexpected errors.
Good work.
Now I'll be starting the Gox vent arm retract, the beanie cap.
Caution and warning memory clear, no unexpected errors.
I copy. In Atlantis, close and lock your visors, initiate O2 flow.
Closing visors, initiating O2 flow.
Fuel cells now on internal. Terminating liquid hydrogen replenishment.
LH2 pressurization.
Liquid hydrogen tank now being pressurized.
A minute, 30 seconds.
Sound suppression water system now being armed for release. Confirmation we have 3 main engines ready for ignition.
One minute.
Space shuttle now on internal power. Liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen fill and drain valves are closed. Solid rocket booster flight data recorders are activated. And the handoff to Atlantis' onboard computers. Atlantis now in control of the countdown.
20.
Firing chain is armed. Sound suppression water system activated. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission to build, resupply, and to do research on the International Space Station.
Houston now controlling. Atlantis begins its penultimate journey to shore up the International Space Station. Atlantis now on the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute ride to orbit, 4.5 million pounds of hardware and Humans taking aim on the international outpost. 30 seconds into the flight. Atlantis almost 2 miles in altitude, almost 6 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center already, traveling 500 miles an hour. The 3 liquid fuel main engines now throttling back to 72% of rated performance, going into the bucket, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier. 55 seconds into the flight, all systems operating normally, 900 miles an hour. The speed of Atlantis right now, 6 miles in altitude, 9 miles downrange.
Atlantis, go with throttle up.
Copy, go with throttle up.
The throttle up call acknowledged by Commander Charlie Hobaugh, joined on the flight deck by pilot Butch Wilmore, flight engineer Randy Bresnick, and Leland Melvin. Seated down on the middeck are Mike Foreman and Bobby Satcher, kicking off their work week with a Monday commute to orbit. 1 minute, 30 seconds into the flight. Atlantis 13 miles in altitude, 15 miles downrange, traveling almost 2,000 miles an hour. Three good auxiliary power units, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good main engines. One minute, 50 seconds into the flight. 10 seconds away from solid rocket booster separation. Booster officer confirms staging a good solid rocket booster separation. Guidance now converging. Atlantis steering into the center lane of Highway 129 en route to the International Space Station. 2 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight, 34 miles in altitude, 48 miles downrange. Atlantis traveling 3,200 miles an hour. The propulsion officer in mission control reports that the orbital maneuvering system engines have ignited. Atlantis kicking on the afterburners.
Copy, 2 engine down.
Atlantis flying on the singular power of its 3 liquid fuel main engines, draining about a half a ton of fuel per second from the large fuel tank. Coming up on the 3-minute mark into the flight, Atlantis 46 miles in altitude, 81 miles downrange, traveling almost 4,000 miles an hour. Atlantis speeding straight as an arrow toward its date with the International Space Station Wednesday morning. Three and a half minutes into the flight, all of Atlantis' systems functioning by the book. 55 miles in altitude, 120 miles downrange, traveling almost 5,000 miles an hour.
Atlantis, negative return.
Atlantis copies, negative return.
Atlantis now too far downrange, too high in altitude to return to the launch site in the event of an engine failure. All 3 engines performing perfectly. 4 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Atlantis now 62 miles in altitude, 180 miles downrange, traveling almost 6,000 miles an hour. All systems performing normally. Atlantis on course, on track for its preliminary orbit. The Environmental Systems Officer reports a good flash evaporator system activated for Atlantis, providing cooling for the shuttle's avionics until the payload bay doors are opened about an hour and a half into the flight.
Atlantis, press to ATO.
Request ATO.
That call up from Capcom Chris Ferguson indicating that Atlantis can now make minimal orbital altitude targets in the event of an engine failure. However, all three engines continue to perform normally, as do the auxiliary power units and the three power-producing fuel cells. 5.5 minutes into the flight, Atlantis now 67 miles in altitude, 312 miles downrange, traveling almost 8,000 miles an hour.
Frankfurt, single engine ops 3.
Atlantis now beginning to roll to a heads-up position, the main engine swiveling, enabling the shuttle to move to a heads-up position above its fuel tank, gaining more favorable communications through the tracking and data relay satellite system as it heads uphill.
Atlantis, Presta Mico, single engine Zaragoza 104.
Presta Mico, single engine Zaragoza 104.
That call from Capcom Chris Ferguson to Commander Charlie Hobaugh indicating that Atlantis can make normal orbital cutoff targets in the event of an engine failure.
Go for the pitch.
Okay, nominal shutdown, go for plus X, go for the pitch.
Now 6 minutes 45 seconds into the flight. Atlantis 66 miles in altitude, almost 500 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, traveling almost 11,000 miles an hour. 90 seconds left in powered flight.
Atlantis, single engine press 104.
Single engine press 104.
Coming up on the 7.5 minute mark into the flight, the main engines will once again be throttled down to limit the stress on the shuttle and its 6 crew members to that of 3 times the effect of gravity. Atlantis approaching a speed of more than 4 miles a second. At the time of main engine cutoff, a minute from now, Atlantis will enter its preliminary orbit at a speed of 5 miles a second. Seven minutes, 40 seconds into the flight. Atlantis providing a smooth ride uphill for Commander Charlie Hobaugh and his crew. 700 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, traveling 15,000 miles an hour. Eight minutes, 10 seconds into the flight. Standing by for main engine cutoff. Main engine cutoff confirmed by the booster officer, standing by for external tank separation. And the bird's eye view from the external tank camera of external tank separation. Atlantis now in its preliminary orbit. Commander Charlie Hobaugh will now maneuver Atlantis so that cameras embedded in the shuttle's umbilical well can perform photography of the discarded external fuel tank. And Mike Foreman and Leland Melvin are about to use digital still and video cameras to capture handheld imagery of the tank for downlink a few hours from now. A flawless climb to orbit for the shuttle Atlantis and its 6 crew members en route now to the International Space Station.
Nico, ohms 1 is not required. Fergie will meet you in the post ohms 1.
And we'll see you there, Scorch. That's not a problem, Scorch. Thanks.
And back here at the Johnson Space Center, the ascent team of flight controllers now in the post-insertion checklist. Flight Director Brian Lunny, second from the right on your screen, joined by Capcom Chris Ferguson, second from the left, presiding over today's climb to orbit for Atlantis. A perfect launch, right on time, at 1:28 and 10 seconds p.m. Central Time, beginning an 11-day mission to fortify the International Space Station. Atlantis now pitching into the right orientation for the photography that will be acquired by Mike Foreman and Leland Melvin using digital still and video cameras.